Hi friends, welcome back to our tutorials, Angular interview question and answers part 2. We are still learning with generic questions which are important from fundamental perspective and also some of the most asked questions with respect to your understanding on Angular framework. If you haven't checked out the previous part 1, please do so that you get the correct understanding about the concepts that we have covered in part 1. Once again, if you have any questions, any queries, please drop them in the comment section. I will be happy to help you and provide you free advice. Before we move on, my request friends, please do subscribe to my channel to keep supporting me so I can bring you more tutorials and that will be my encouragement. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. First question on this part series is what is Bazel tool? Bazel is getting extremely popular with each passing day. Bazel is a powerful build tool that's developed and massively used by Google. It is used to keep track of all the dependencies between different packages and build targets. In Angular 8, you can build your CLI application using Bazel. The entire Angular framework itself is now being built in Bazel, so we can understand how powerful the tool is. We have an option to use other tools, but Bazel is getting increasingly popular, so it's worth a while to give a thought and understanding about it. So now let's get into some hands-on section. So what is the default port number that Angular applications run on, and how can you customize or how can you change it? So the default port that Angular applications run is 4200. We can easily change the port number by passing the below command, which is ngserve -- port equal to new port number. Let's see that in action. So I have my application here. Now let's go into that and we will see how to execute. So I told you the command to run is ngserve. So when we do that, it will by default build on port number 4200. Let's give it a minute to compile. While it is building, friends, I request you please subscribe to my channel to keep supporting me. All right, so there we are. Now our application has been built and it's now ready. So let's see the port number that it's serving on. So we can see here it says Angular Live Development Server is listening on localhost 4200. Like I said, the default port that Angular applications run is 4200. Now let's see how we can customize and change it. So the command I told you is ngserve, then you put -- port equal to, and here you can specify the port number that you want to mention and run your application on. It can be any port number, any valid, as long as it is not occupied. So 5100, I'm saying let's run the application at 5100 port. Just make sure that this port is not occupied, else it will not be able to run the application. That's one of the common mistakes that developers do, is provide a port number which is already occupied and then the application doesn't serve. All right, so here we are. We have compiled the app successfully and now the message says is listening on localhost 5100. So now we have our application running on localhost 5100. Now let's see that in Chrome. I'm going to change the port number and we can see that our application is up and running on localhost 5100. So far so good. So let's see. So we can see our application is running perfectly fine on localhost 5100. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right, so what are the default testing frameworks available in Angular default project setup in CLI? So the default testing frameworks that are supported by vanilla project are Jasmine, karma, and protractor. Jasmine is used for writing unit tests. Karma is used for test execution and test runner, and protractor is used for end-to-end test scripts execution. Let's take a quick look about it as well before we move. So you would see E2E folder under your Angular project directory that is for end-to-end execution and end-to-end test scripts. All the test scripts always ends with -spec.ts. So this is the end-to-end protracted test script that is run. For Jasmine and Karma, you would see under app, for each of the components, you would have a script file, which is spec file. So you can see here, each component service, everything will have a .spec file that is .spec.ts, that is the test file, and that is written in Jasmine. To run, we'll use Karma, and for end to end, we will use protractor. Explain package.json file. With the existence of package.json, it will be very easy to manage the dependencies in the project. If we are using TypeScript in the Angular project, then we can mention the TypeScript package and version of TypeScript that we are running in package.json. Package.json is also used to manage the dev dependencies and the library framework versions. Let's take a quick look. Under your project structure, you should have package.json file. And for that, you go and scroll, you can see the project name. You can see all the version numbers of the dependencies. Along with that, we can also see the versions of the framework that we are running. For example, Bootstrap is running on 4.3.1, and then RxJS is running on 6.4.0, and similarly you can see Karma is running 4.1, etc. The version TypeScript is running is 3.5.3. So you can get all the version numbers of the libraries and framework that you're seeing in package.json file. What commands do we use to run the tests? So this is another important question asked in most interviews is, how do you do unit testing? How do you do end-to-end testing? So the answer is, we write all our test scripts under respective folder project directory. If it is unit test, we write under the source app. If it is E2E, we write it under the source E2E folder. Let's see that quickly in action. Let's cut this. So, like I said, under source, you would see all the spec.ts files. These are the unit scripts, and under the project, you see E2E. Those are our protractor end-to-end scripts. To run them, we will use the command. You can see here also the command ngtest. So we can just say npm test pm. So you can see internally it will resolve to ngtest, this command, and that is what is being executed. So this is how you run unit tests using ngtest command. And to run E2E, will run ng E2E. Let's see that also in action. This will take a while, but okay, so there are some errors, which is fine, we'll resolve them later. But for now, the important thing is, what are the commands to run? That's ng test will help you test Angular unit tests, and ng E2E will help you run end-to-end scripts. All right, let's give it a minute to run. All right, while it's building and serving, first it compiles the app, and then it will open the Karma runner, and it will execute the scripts. So it will give you a report like this, failed, success, passed, everything. But important thing that we are learning here is what are the commands do you learn to test your unit test as well as your end-to-end tests. How do you upgrade Angular apps? So this is yet another thing like we discussed in part 1. There are times when you start building in a certain version of language, and then with time we have to upgrade our Angular apps. So the question comes in interview is, how do you upgrade Angular apps, right? So the command that we use is ng update @angular CLI @angular/core. Using this command, we would be able to upgrade our Angular app version. We'll see that in just a bit once we have learned about how to check the version. We'll come back to this updating Angular in just a while. Now, how do you convert TypeScript code into JavaScript? Now, this is yet another important question that is asked. Since we write all the code in TypeScript, all the Angular application are written in TypeScript. And how does it convert to JavaScript? So there is a word called transpiling. So like how we have compiling, similarly we have something called transpiling. So using transpiling during the build, the code from TypeScript gets converted into JavaScript in real time. And that is what Angular does when it builds the application. So important thing to note and know is the interviewer wants you to speak about transpiling, and he wants you to see that do you know the meaning of transpiling and do you understand the concept of how the TypeScript code gets converted into JavaScript. Now, how do you find out the CLI version? So let's see that. So we use the command called ng-version. This would give us the version of what Angular CLI you're running and what version of Angular. Let's quickly see this in action. So we will type ng-version. So this should give you all the details. So here you can see the Angular CLI version is 8.3. We can see that Angular version is 8.2.13 and all the dev dependencies that are there, right? So to find out the details of the versions that you're running, we need to use the command ng-version. Now, there are a lot of linting issues sometimes. What is linting? Linting is to check that your code is correct, it's implemented correct, there are no syntactical errors, especially with respect to TypeScript and the language itself. So that is what is called as linting. Now, how do we lint our application to check for the code quality? We run the command ng-lint. So we will write ng-lint. So this would check the details. You can see it says linting Green Nation. That's the name of the project I have given. Once this is done, it will tell what errors. For example, you can see lint errors found in these listed files. So these linting are nothing but like you can see here the yellow color line. So here it says, if you see problem loading. So it shows you what problems you have in which files and how do you resolve them. Those are mostly with respect to ending with a new line or a white space or a curly brace alignment, etc. So that's something that um, we can easily fix. So these are not major issues, but you should be aware of the fact that there are lint issues and how do you find them using ng-lint command. How can you get the window height and width in component class? Now this is another, we'll come to component classes and details in our next part. But for now, what I want you to know is that there is an object called window, which is available across all the components and services in Angular applications. So this window will provide you with the browser height, width, and you don't have to inject, you don't have to initiate, that object is globally available. So when you say window.height or window.width, you would be able to get the applications the browser's height and width easily. All right. Now let's go to the next. Okay, so this question is again little uh, high level, but what I would want you to do is just understand the basics of it, because this is covered in detail when we talk about browsers and subscribe and unsubscribe. But for now, how do you unsubscribe and subscribe to observables? We use the ng destroy method on ng destroy method, and we will write something like subscription dot unsubscribe. We'll see that in detail, but for now, just remember that how do you unsubscribe? We unsubscribe it on ng destroy on ng destroy. I'll talk about component lifecycle in detail along with example. For now, just stay with me. Okay, these are all little again um, detailed ones. I want to cover it along with services so we don't break the flow. Let's go to the CLI part first. All right. How do you disable the prefix of any component in Angular CLI command? Now, you would see that most of the components will come with prefix, like for example, app hyphen component. Let me show you an example. So you go to any component TS file, and you will see that the selector name is prefixed here with app hyphen country hyphen maintenance. So that is the prefix we are talking about, like app. Now I don't want this for my component. So how do we get it? And how do I remove it? Like I don't want the prefix for my components or services. So the way to do it is just disabling using the hyphen hyphen prefix equal to false. So when we generate ng generate component name, let's say C1, and I'll write prefix equal to false. So this way we can just say that the new component that we generate will not have the prefix. Let's see that in action. I generated a component and go to TS file. Now you see there is no prefix, that is app. I can give any prefix that I want. But Angular suggests that we should use app as the prefix that we want to attach. It's a good practice, right? All right. So this is yet another concept, foundational concept that people ask. How do you optimize an Angular application? It's more generic, it's foundational, and it's important. So how do you optimize an Angular application? Consider lazy loading. Lazy loading is only loading of application modules which are required for that particular screen. Make sure that any third-party library which is not used is removed from the application. We don't want unnecessary loading or making our application heavy because of including third-party libraries. Have all the dependencies and dev dependencies clearly separated out. So this is important, like we saw in package.json, that we have some important dependencies and then we have some dev dependencies. So we need to clearly separate them, which will allow us to load the application faster. Make sure the application doesn't have any unnecessary import statements. So we should not have any unnecessary import statements unless you're making a call in that particular service component or module. Make sure the application is bundled, uglified, and tree shaking is done, which means you need to make sure that the code is optimized, it's been reduced, so the size is reduced, the, the mapping is done correctly, which means there is tree shaking that is applied. Consider ahead of time compilation. That's yet another important aspect to optimize the Angular application. What is ngzone? Optimize an Angular app. So zone.js is one of the Angular dependencies which provides a mechanism called zones for encapsulating and intercepting async activities in the browser, like set timeout, set interval, etc. These zones are execution contexts that allow Angular to track the start and completion of async activities. Zone.js provides a global zone that can be forked and extended to further encapsulate. So those are some of the things that you can do with ngzone to optimize our applications. We can see that in, again, go to package.json and search. So we can see zone.js on line number 25 that already comes as part of Angular CLI project. All right, now let's back. All right, that covers our part 2 of our interview question and answers. From here on, we start with actual building blocks of Angular, covering modules, components, routing, services, pipes, directives, testing, build, compilation, and much, much more. So stay with me on this as in the journey of learning Angular interview question and answers. If you like this video, please like, share, comment, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to keep supporting and encouraging me. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for part 3.